Hello, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Wherever you are, welcome to Solitude Center for Spiritual Living. We are a 100% virtual group committed to spread the seeds of love held onto the vast literature of the spirits and the books by spiritual mentor Joana de Angelis. We are very happy to be here with you. Today, we have the pleasure and honor to host our dear friend, Dr. Sonia Doi. Dr. Doi is currently serving as president of the following organizations: Allan Kardec Spirit Society of Maryland, U.S. Spiritist Medical Association, and International Spiritist Medical Association. Today, she will talk to us about mind and spiritual body. Dear Dr. Doi, welcome. The room is all yours.
Thank you, Adriana, for the nice introduction. Thank you all for being with us in the Solitude Center for Spiritual Living. My talk today is going to be on mind and the spiritual body. So thank you, and I hope you stay with us during this presentation. So let me start here. I'd like to start with this quote that, although has been a little controversial, who actually is the owner of the quote. It has been attributed to Pierre Teilhard de Chardin, who was a French Jesuit priest, philosopher, paleontologist. He was pretty much interested in human evolution. And he wrote, "We are not human beings having a spiritual experience. We are spiritual beings having a human experience." I am quite sure that most of you have heard this quote before, but it's interesting that it resonates with what we learn from Spiritism. Kardec, in the Spirit's book, tells the human being is a spirit who has a physical body during its terrestrial existence that we call incarnation. Frequently, we hear people saying, "I have a spirit." No, we don't have a spirit. We are the spirit, and we have a physical body. The other important concept that Kardec brings to us is that the union of spirit and matter is necessary to enable matter to act intelligently. That's to say that the intelligence, the intelligent principle is in the spirit, not in the matter, and is necessary the spirit to unite with the matter to make it acting and function in an intelligent manner. So it's the union of the spirit that makes the brain intelligent and that can command the whole function of the physical body. And yet another important information coming from the spirit is that the spirit is connected to the material body by an envelope of fluid matter, and that's called, Kardec called it, the perispirit. Peri meaning around, surrounding, is the envelope that surrounds the spirit, and it was also called the spiritual body. And that concept of spiritual body had been already introduced to us by the Apostle Paul of Tarsus. In his letter to Corinthians, he says, "What is sown is perishable. What is raised is imperishable. It is sown in dishonor. It is raised in glory. It is sown in weakness. It is raised in power. It is sown a natural body. It is raised a spiritual body. If there is a natural body, there is a spiritual body. So he makes a clear distinction between the what he calls a natural body, which is corresponds to our physical body, and the spiritual body that raises with the spirit when the physical body dies. So a question is, why the spirit needs an intermediary, meaning the perispirit, to connect to the material body? Why is this intermediary needed? Well, we all know that the spirit is immaterial and the physical body is made of dense matter. So, in order to connect, for the spirit to connect to the material body, it needs to go through something that enables it to be compatible. So the perispirit is made, as we're going to discuss in the next slides, of a special type of matter that has some characteristics, that share some characteristics with the spirit, and some characteristics with the material body, the physical body. So in that way, it can transfer, it can connect to both entities. It can connect with the spirit and it can connect to the body. And through this interconnection, it transfers informations from the spirit to the body and vice versa. So it is a question of the constitution of the spirit and the constitution of the physical body that requires an intermediary that interconnects both of them. Kardec, in the book Genesis, defines the perispirit as one of the most important products of cosmic fluid, which condenses around an intelligent focus, which is the spirit. So what is this cosmic fluid? And again, in the book Genesis, Kardec has a whole chapter that discusses, that explains the cosmic fluid. But I'm going to very, very briefly condense it here as saying that the cosmic fluid is the matter that fills all the space in the universe and penetrates all bodies. The cosmic fluid is the primitive matter that gives origin to everything in the universe, including all living beings. So it's the primitive origin of all the matter that we see in the whole universe. And Kardec continues to explain, although both the perispirit and the physical body originate from the same primitive element of cosmic fluid, they are different forms of matter. Different forms of matter. That's why they are both made of matter, but they are at the same time different forms. So to understand a little bit what these different forms of matter are, I'm showing this illustration. And if you look at it, it just illustrates that matter is made of molecules that are made of atoms that has several components like the electron and the nucleus. And the nucleus is made of particles, and the nuclear particles are made of subatomic particles, which science considers now the elementary particles of matter, the quarks, gluons, etc. They are supposed to be the smallest types of matter, and there are so many other names of atomic particles that we're not going to discuss here. But anyways, as science progresses, it's very likely that we are going to find even more primitive particles. And this is what forms matter by different combinations of these particles. They might combine in different numbers, associate in different types of particles, and then making different types of atoms. Different types of atoms will integrate, will combine to give us countless numbers of different molecules which may associate to one another to make different types of matter. And just to make it a very simple example here, if we have two atoms of hydrogen and combine it with one atom of oxygen, we have water. But if we combine two atoms of hydrogen and two atoms of oxygen, we have hydrogen peroxide, which, as you know, is quite different from water. So this is just a simple example to explain how, although being formed by the same primitive elements, the combinations will end in different types of matter. But this is not the only thing that makes matter different. The matter can be presented in different forms, different states. So here again, a very simple example. If we think of water, we immediately think about the liquid, water in its liquid form. But if we decrease the temperature, the water, the molecules are going to crystallize in a solid form, which is ice. And if we raise the temperature, the molecules will separate well apart from each other and will be in a state of gas or vapor that now is no longer visible at our naked eyes. So you see the same substance, water, can be presented in different states that are touchable, visible, and other forms that are not visible, not immediately touchable. So this is a simple way to explain the different forms of matter that can exist. And of course, there are more states of matter, for example, plasma and other forms that science is discovering and will for sure discover even more. And Kardec continues to explain the perispirit by telling us that in addition to different structures, the perispirit has different natures. The nature of the perispirit varies with the degree of moral advancement of the spirit. And I think some of you know that because, or maybe all of you know that, higher spirits, the more elevated spirits, have a very light, very subtle perispirit. And the spirits that have a low degree of advancement, the lower level of spirits, have a much denser perispirit. So the nature of the perispirit varies. And even in our planet, the incarnate spirits in this planet do not have the same nature of perispirit. We may be in a certain level, degree of advancement in this planet, but we may have people with a little lower, people with a little more advanced degree of advancement, and that defines the nature of the perispirit. So this is a very important information. And sometimes, this is what Kardec explains in the Medium's book, sometimes the perispirit is so dense that it gets confused with the material body. And discarnate spirits with an inferior degree of advancement, as they discarnate and they look at their perispirit, they believe they are still alive because that's so dense. And it's the perispirit, it's through the perispirit that spirits become visible to seeing mediums. So they are recognized by the perispiritual body. Now, different from the perispirit, the physical body, although also made of matter, the physical body of all beings is formed by the same elements, the very same elements. And it does not depend on the spirit degree of involvement. So our physical body is absolutely the same. The constitution of the physical body is the same. That's how we can study the spirit body, the material body, the physical body in medicine, because it applies. If you study the physical body, it applies no matter to which individual we are talking about. Now, we all know that there is a resemblance between the spirit and the physical body. And André Luiz, in the book Evolution in Two Worlds, explains how that happens. It says the spiritual body is not a reflection of the physical body. In fact, it is the physical body that reflects the spiritual body, which in turn expresses the mental body that presides its formation. So what is André Luiz saying? There is an organization there. There's a hierarchical order in this formation. So it is the mental body that presides, that has all the information, that governs the formation of the spiritual body, of the perispirit. And then is the perispirit that acts as a mold for the formation of the physical body. So mental body governs the spiritual body that governs the physical body. So it is the physical body that resembles the perispirit and not the other way around. Now, André Luiz introduced the concept of mental body. So let's just describe. There's so much about mental body, but we're going to summarize as the mental body is the envelope of the mind. It contains the mind. The mind is in the spirit. The mind belongs to the spirit. The mental body is, or the mind is where thoughts are expressed. We all know that thoughts are originated by the spirit. And the mental body, as we just saw, commands the formation of the perispirit. And it carries the memories of the present incarnation and all the previous experiences. So as the spirit moves from one incarnation to another, it is in the mental body that it carries the memories, the experiences of all incarnations. And since André Luiz introduced the concept of mental body, I'm going to introduce the other elements of the perispirit. In addition to the mental body, we're going to talk about the vital body and the causal body. But as we proceed in this talk, we're going to be talking about the other elements that comprise the perispirit. And again, as you will see, most of the information I'm sharing with you today comes from the descriptions that Andrea Luiz brings to us from the spirit world and it was transmitted by the mediumship of Francisco Xavier in several books. So Andrea Luiz is telling us that the perispirit is governed by 7 energy centers that in Hinduism is known as chakras. And these energy centers branch into plexus and vibrate in harmony with each other under the controlling power of the mind. Again, there is a hierarchical organization that shows that all these energy centers are commanded by the mind through the crown center, and they all vibrate in harmony with each other. So the crown center connects through a network with all the other centers, as we are going to see in the next slides. So the mental body is in the crown center, or sometimes called coronal center, which is on the top of our head. And this is, of course, belongs to the perispirit, but is connected also to the central area of the brain. So the crown center in the perispirit is connected to the spirit through the mind, and is connected also to the physical brain, to our physical body through the brain. We're going to see that there's special structure there. So again, the crown center where the mind is located is directly related to the pineal gland, which is in the central area of the brain. In this illustration, you see the arrow pointing to this very small structure called pineal. And Andrea Luiz says the crown center is responsible for assimilation of the energy from superior spirits. We are used to talk about the crown center in mediumship and in passes. When we apply passes, we usually put our hands on the top of the head, meaning we are directing energy through the crown center. But the crown center is connected, as Andrea Luiz says, with this structure called pineal gland. And next to the crown center is the cerebral center that commands the endocrine system, and where the gland called pituitary is just next, a little below the hypothalamus. The pituitary is the master gland of the endocrine system. And we're going to learn the connection between all of this, the crown center, the mind, the pineal, and the pituitary gland, the endocrine system. So before that, I just want to give you a very brief history on the pineal. The pineal was the first detailed description of the pineal was given by the Greek physician and philosopher Galenus. And he, looking at this structure, he called it conarion, which means the pine, because of the resemblance to the pine cone. And the pineal is so small. It's about 5 to 8 millimeters, like the size of a grain of rice. Much, much later, like more than 1,000 years later, Descartes described the pineal as the seat of the soul. And he believed that the pineal was responsible for mechanisms that regulate the precise function of the human body that is responsible for manifestations of passions and regulate mental dysfunctions. So Descartes was already associating the pineal gland with functions of the body, and especially with mental disturbances. In the book Missionaries of the Light, chapter 2, the spirit André Luiz, through the mediumship of Francisco Xavier, transmits the concept that the pineal is a gland. It says that the pineal secretes psychic hormones, meaning hormones that are related to emotions, and that the pineal gland controls the whole endocrine system. So very important information. But what I want you to note is that this book was published in 1945. And it was not only 1958 that the hormone melatonin that is produced by the pineal was discovered and published in the scientific media, in scientific journals. And it was only then that the pineal was scientifically recognized as a gland. Well, André Luiz told us that the pineal was a gland and that secreted a hormone much more than 10 years before that. So it was not until 1979 that some scientific papers were describing that there was a relationship between the pineal and the endocrine system. So until then, that was not known in science. And now we know that there are receptors for the hormone melatonin in several glands, and that there is an interrelation between the pineal gland and all the hormones produced by the pituitary and the glands that are commanded by the pituitary gland. So, as you can see, science came after these Spiritist revelations, and this was demonstrated in a paper published by our Spiritist, by our Brazilian Spiritist doctors who are working in research, and that published a paper in a scientific journal describing that the Spirit's revelation preceded the information brought by science. This is very, very, very important for us Spiritists, because it's validating the information that the spirits bring to us and that later are confirmed by scientific discovery. So this paper by our friends, Brazilian scientists, Brazilian doctors who are spiritists, brought in this paper the information about Spiritism, about André Luiz and his revelations. So very important. But continuing with our with informations that come from André Luiz, and here it's in 3 books. He tells us that thoughts, as we have already learned, originated by the spirit and expressed in the mind. The pineal gland, which, as we just saw, is aligned with the crown center and aligned with the mind. But the pineal gland works almost like a receptor that captures thoughts from its own incarnate spirit and other spirits is very important in mediumship, and also captures energy from the cosmic fluid. So the pineal gland works as an antenna in our brain. And that's why in the beginning, André Luiz says the crown center absorbs energy, receives energy from superior spirits. It's through the pineal gland, this antenna, that captures the energy from our own spirit and other spirits, as well as cosmic fluid. This has a very important consequence that we're going to discuss later in this talk. Why this is so important, all these types of energy coming through the same center and being combined in our perispirit. So the crown center transmits this energy, all the energy received, to all the other centers, all the other energy centers of the perispirit. And then the perispirit distributes all this energy through the nerves, through the organic plexus, and through this network of nerves that goes through from the perispirit to the physical body. And then all this energy transits, moves through the entire physical body. So here is just an illustration of all the distribution of the nerves. There are nerves that goes to the skin, called somatic plexuses, and those who goes to internal organs, visceral plexuses. But this is what carries the conducts the energy or the impulses from the nerve system, from the nerves, to our skin, to our internal organs. So the same way that the perispirit serves as distributing all this energy that makes contact with the nerves and reach the physical body, the same way sensations, perceptions of the physical body or transfer back from these nerve terminations to the perispirit, to the mind. And the other illustration just shows all these nerve terminations and associated with the nerve, with this vital centers, the energy centers in the perispirit. So there's a very fine interaction between these structures. So the perispirit is the spirit's vehicle for thought, sensation, and perception, as I said before, that travels both ways, from the mind to the periphery to our physical body, and from the physical body, its sensations, perceptions travel back to bring information to the mind. And André Luiz defines this as saying that the perispirit is a vehicle of electric cells, which can be defined as an electromagnetic field in which thoughts vibrate in a closed circuit. This layer where thought vibrates is defined by André Luiz as the vital body, and we're going to discuss that in more detail. So the vital body, which sometimes is called aura, is known as aura, is the energetic projection of the thoughts that are modified by emissions from the cellular field and then circulates in the perispirit. So it's not, let's think a little Now, the thought is produced by the mind, it's distributed to our through our um, perispirit to the physical body, but then it interacts with all the cellular components of the physical body and all the components of the perispirit, and it's then modified, and that is projected, is exteriorized in a layer that forms what is called the vital body. So it's just a layer that is projected by the perispirit. So the vital body is formed by neuropsychic fluid. It's like a plasma screen where the thought and all this modified by all these cellular emissions are projected, and that vital body then belongs to the physiological field and is disintegrated when the physical body dies. So this projection disintegrates, not the perispirit itself, but the projection. Dr. George Andrea, who was a Spiritist physician, in a book that has not been translated to English yet, called Enfoques Científicos na Doutrina Espírita, explains that way before illnesses are manifested in the physical body, they have already altered the perispirit, altered the function of the energy centers, and all that is projected in the vital body, in something that we can call aura. The aura then shows the signs of the illness way before it's detected in the physical body. And if we could see this vital body today, it would be like an X-ray or some kind of tool that we could see the aura. We could actually detect, diagnose diseases much earlier than when the disease is actually manifested, and we could act on it much earlier. So maybe one day we find a tool that can actually see the aura. I know that some people are able to see auras, but here we're talking about details in this aura. It's not just that kind of glow which has sometimes colors, but it's more details that really present what's going on inside of us. And here is an information that gives us even more insight of the aura. Andrea Luiz says, this is how it's through the aura that spirits working in the realm of cure can help incarnates with their physical illnesses during sleep or during mental detachment through interventions in the spiritual body according to the law of merit. So this is when we think about spiritual treatment, spiritual that some people call spiritual surgery. That's how it happens. It does happen. And the spirits, the benefactor spirits, use this projection to see what's going on and what is needed to be repaired. And as we are detached, because the perispirit needs to be detached from the physical body, and that's where they work. And it's important information. The interventions are processed according to the law of merit. So it really depends on whether we have merits for the interventions. So while the spirit is partially detached from the physical body, meaning through sleep or even deep meditation, the benefactor spirits can make profound changes in the perispirit. And these changes are not immediately shown in the somatic body. They will gradually produce changes in the physical body. So that's why usually the spiritual treatment takes time to show results. So this spiritual intervention is greatly facilitated by prayer and also by the patients having a mind enriched by the transformative power of faith. So there are two elements here that are key for these interventions. So aside from merit, there's also two important elements, prayer and faith, to receive the grace of having the intervention of this spiritual assistance. But let's go back a little bit into the concept of thought. And this is a striking information that comes from André Luiz, from the spirit world. André Luiz describes the particle of thought, which is produced by the spirit, although alive and powerful, is passive, is neutral, before the sentiment gives it form and nature for good or for evil. So I underlined the particle of thought because what André Luiz is saying here at that time was not understandable. The particle of thought, but this is now completely in consonance with modern physics, with quantum physics, where a wave sometimes has a behavior of matter and matter has a behavior of a wave, of energy. So there is this transition between matter and energy. So that the fact that André Luiz refers to thought, that we think we cannot see thought, but we think about thought as an energy, he talks about the thought being a particle, is very striking. So he says that thought is passive, is neutral, until it's associated with sentiments. And then it acquires form and nature. So the thought initially is not good or bad, but it's our emotion, our sentiments that make it good or bad. And it is the fact that thought behaves as a particle that gives it form. Well, this book was published in 1954. And more, if you are amazed with that, this is even more amazing. In the book Genesis, Kardec explains that thoughts generate fluidic images that are reflected in the perispirit as in a mirror, and that create a form as in a photograph, which is called thought form, forma pensamento in Portuguese. So 1868 was when Genesis was published. And look at the concept of thought, so current with modern physics. So this is what makes us so amazed to when we study Spiritism and think about all the revelations that were brought to us. And later, little by little, they are brought by the light of science. And proceeding in that thought, in the book Missionaries of the Light, the instructor Alexandre tells Andrea Luiz that the sick body almost always indicates the sick mind. Well, we just learned the power of thought. We learned that thought travels through the whole perispirit and is transferred to the physical body. So no wonder a sick body almost always indicates a sick mind. So that's why we need to be so vigilant of our mental state. It's important that we block aggressive thoughts, vengeance, uncontrolled emotions, sentiments of pride, selfishness, and so many other inferior thoughts. Because at the end, this is what is going to make us sick. So the perispirit and the physical body are both impacted by a combination of multiple influences that affect the mind. And as we studied earlier, discussed earlier, the pineal, the crown center captures, receives our own thoughts, the sentiments, the emotions of the incarnate spirit, but also receives influences, external influences by other incarnate spirits that resonate with our thoughts, and even incarnate by other discarnate spirits or incarnate spirits. So we, depending on our thoughts, we attract other spirits. So if they might be incarnate or discarnate, and we need to be very vigilant of our thoughts, because we want to avoid the influence of other lower level spirits that will combine with our thoughts and make things much worse. We also have to be vigilant of our environment, because the crown center, the pineal, is also open to energy in the environment. So sometimes we feel I'm in an environment that I don't feel very good here. There's something that bothers me. Well, because there's so much energy that's released there that's not compatible with the energy that we are bringing. So we feel that disparity. And at that time, we only have two choices. Either we try to leave that environment, or we try to change the environment by praying, by mentalizing high level energy, and try to change, contribute for a change in the energy of the environment. But that's also important, because sometimes when we feel weak, when we feel disturbed, when we feel like we need good energy, we can resort to the nature. We can be in an environment where good energy is vibrating. So if we take good walk in nature, in contact with nature, we will be able to absorb those good energy that actually makes us much better and feeling more vibrant. So we can actually use that. But we need to be very mindful of our thoughts. In addition to all these interactions between our thoughts and external influences that will impact the perispirit and our physical mind, a physical body, we have to remember a very important component that will impact our perispirit and the physical body from the very beginning when it's created, which are memories of serious wrongdoings, especially those repressed in the spirit that we didn't uh, deal with yet, that we didn't have courage to face. These memories create in the mind an area of remorse, of guilt, around which thoughts will circulate in a closed circuit, will circulate over and over and over and over again. And this will be reflected upon the perispirit and connected in a part of the perispirit that is connected with the remembrance of persons and circumstances associated with the source of these memories. So this is something that we have to really think about and go deep inside of ourselves. The perispirit has a component that has been called the causal body by Andrea Luiz. Is where our debits and credits are imprinted. And I underline debits because that's what is going to bring us suffering later. So the causal body, where these debits are imprinted, can be purified, is the part of the perispirit that can be purified through expiation during our incarnation or every reincarnation. We are giving an opportunity to expiate and to purify, to get rid of those debits. But sometimes inferior spirits with a wicked mind resist, and therefore they do not take the opportunity of that reincarnation to expiate. And then when they return to the spirit world, they may need to spend long time in this area called umbral, which is an area of spirits that are not evil enough to be sent to more painful colonies of reparation, and not elevated enough to ascend to more noble areas. So it's an area, it's a transitory area. Spirits who are really evil and resist any type of expiation may spend time there, and if they do not repent, they do not use this time to improve themselves, they may go to more painful colonies of reparation. And those who discarnate and have more elevated moral values, more elevated spirit, they may spend very little time in umbral, and then they might ascend to other noble areas. So the period that spirits spend in the umbral depends on how much they need to be there. And this is to give them a chance of transformation and redemption. So Kardec talks about these causes of affliction in the Gospel According to Spiritism, chapter 5. And he tells us that majority of our afflictions have a cause in the present life. But if we don't find a cause in the present life, the cause must be in the past life. because every effect has a cause. So if we are seeing we are suffering now, we are suffering the effects, we have to see where the cause is. So we have to reap what we sow. If we sow evil, if we had bad attitudes, bad behaviors, or if we hurt people in the past, we need to face that. We need to come across and pay our debts. And that's what's called expiation. And this is taken in account when the perispirit is planned even before we incarnate. In these plans, which then are kept in the mind, and the mind transferred to the formation of the perispirit, uh, uh, right, during the first union, the union between the spirit and matter at conception, and the very first connection with the material cell, the egg cell that's going to be developing into a material body, is there that the mind starts to unfold the plan of the perispirit. And that explains why we sometimes are born with congenital diseases, with birth defects, with morbid predispositions. In predispositions, we can then change. This is not a determinism. We are not born like that and as a punishment, but it's a way to pay our debts and to induce the willing to transform ourselves. Sometimes we are not affected directly in the physical body, but we are affected by circumstances in which we are born or live to induce us in the transformation of our moral habits and to actually resist the development of inferior moral values. So the process of expiation may take several incarnations, depending on how deep, how severe, how serious it is, or may be shortened by inner reform following the moral teachings of Jesus. So the process of expiation is not something that is determined and is set on stone. Yes, we have to expiate, but the expiation can sometimes be a little less severe, a little less painful, can be alleviated if we work on our inner reform, if we work for the good, if we learn and follow the teachings of Jesus, if we take a good conduct in this life. So that can alleviate so much the process of expiation. André Luiz tells us that the physical body is not only a divine receptacle for the development of our capabilities, but is also a kind of miraculous core that absorbs the toxic waste and shadows that we bring in our perispirit when we incarnate. So as we learned, the mind carries all these memories and carries the plan for the perispirit to expiate, to get rid of these shadows, this toxic waste that we carry. And this goes through our perispirit, transferred to the physical body, and is through the physical body that we live these sufferings, that we live the consequences of what we have done in previous lives. But we always have a way to modify that, which we just talked about, by modifying our conduct, by modifying the way we live through the teachings that Jesus left to us. We can actually work in our reform, in our inner transformation, and that will change all the way how we think. And by changing how we think, we again impact our perispirit, which will transform again our physical body. And also, it's very important that we always think that through prayer, through faith, we can count on benefactor spirits that will help us in getting alleviation, in getting uh, this sore parts in the spiritual body that will then be transferred, be perceived, and expressed in the physical, in the material body. So the infirmities of the physical body are in general a process of cure of the infirmities of the soul. That's basically it. And that's how we need to this is something that we need to take in consideration in resignation as we are afflicted by a disease. We should always remember that it's through that disease, through suffering in the physical body, that we are cleaning our perispirit and cleaning, making it better, getting rid of our debts and getting it better for next future incarnations. So here is just to kind of review what we talked about. Our thoughts, our memories are all in the mental body, in the spirit that is carried from one incarnation to another, and is the mental body, the mind, that will then govern, that will structure the perispirit according to our pre-incarnation plans and what we need in order to evolve. And the perispirit then works as a mode for the physical body. So the perispirit is aligned with our physical body, cell to cell, in all the structure. It's completely aligned and is connected to our physical body. So we need to, if we want to change anything in our physical body, yes, we use all the resources of the human medicine, but we can also count with spiritual assistance. But for that, we need to make our own effort in transforming our inner self. So we have to watch our thoughts, our habits, our conduct. We need to work on self-improvement if we want to get better. And Jesus left us his teachings to serve as a guide for us to conduct ourselves. Jesus is a model to what we can look at and shape ourselves up. We also need to use prayer and meditation to maintain ourselves connected with higher level spirits and not to be prey to inferior spirits, to inferior energy. And I would like to end proposing that to work by truly striving to live the teachings of Jesus in our daily life, by being more generous, kind, and compassionate, by loving our brothers and sisters as we are loved by Jesus, so that one day we can display a beautiful and resplendent spirit. No matter how long it takes, we should start working with this in mind right now. Thank you.